Hi, you're listening to a new series of podcasts from Thinking Outside of the Cube, a podcast produced by Katie and Gabby. Today, let's hear it from the artists of the Banyuhay exhibition, Antonio Pastoriza, Kevin Roque, Meatfist, and the curator, Gwen Bautista.
Hello, I'm Meatfist. Real name Christopher Sum, and I'm a visual artist. I do comic books, working on a graphic novel right now. Sometimes I do a lot of painting and a lot of events. That's mostly what I do. I just try and create experiences. Currently, right now, I'm working on this food project. It's called Mom's Place. So I've always wanted like a test kitchen, I guess. So there it is. Oh, and I'm one of the guys who did Banyuhay, the exhibit we'll be talking about, right? Yeah.
I'm Antonio Pastoriza, and I'm a DLSU graduate, psychology graduate, sorry, and I'm a visual artist. And I'm from Cebu, but I'm now based in Manila. And right now, I'm focusing on developing my art practice with exhibits, with commissions, with other projects within the local art community.
I'm Gwen Bautista, and I'm an art journalist and an independent curator. I created the show Banyuhay, and I usually work with a lot of young and emerging Filipino contemporary artists in developing exhibitions, projects, both in commercial and public funded institutions.
Cool. So for our first question, we were wondering if you guys could tell us a little bit more about the exhibition.
So the exhibit is called Banyuhay. Banyuhay means metamorphosis, and it's basically the three of us, me, Tonio, and Kevin, and we explored the distances between home, identity, memory, belonging, a lot of those sort of words together, I guess, that word cloud. Yeah, so that's kind of like the idea behind the exhibit, with our distances being closer and closer. So Kevin is he lives in Bulacan, or like he used to, but yeah, he goes back and forth. And then he came to Manila after just living an existence there. And Tonio was in Cebu, and then coming to Manila, and then just going back. So there's that experience. And then for me, I'm here in Philippines, and then I grew up in Dubai. So yeah, just going back and forth, that experience. Yeah, so that's basically the whole exhibit in a nutshell, and where we try and explore those ideas and concepts. I'll throw it to Tonio. What's up, man?
I guess something that's important that I always note, being able to capture the experience of an impactful experience of developing, I guess, in another environment from where you're born, and how impactful that is with maybe your psyche or your experience as a whole. And like how, I don't know, it's more common than I thought, but also quite unique. And then being able to capture that through the exhibit is something that the three of us, I guess we all had a good time doing, but also it was a challenge being able to get back and look at these old memories, these old experiences, and bring them back to life.
This is the first show that I curated in the Visayas. I've curated shows in Manila. I've always wanted to work with artists from different parts of the Philippines, of course, and I've been to many parts of the Visayas, and I've met a lot of artists. Many of them are actually showing or have presented with Qube. Like I think Raniel Compra, they have a show on at the same time with Banyuhay. So when I was invited by Pia and Maris to work with Qube, I was very happy because I really wanted to work with a gallery outside of Manila. And also happy to know that I'll be working with three young artists in the early part of their career, because I'm really interested with how they would, be able to expand their practice in the long run. And of course, like Antonio, I've been familiar with him because I've met him in Manila, and we're also working with another show. But yeah, so very happy about that fact. The other thing also is that I like the idea that they are bent on understanding parts of themselves and how they have transformed as a person and as an artist through this show. So this exhibition is more like presenting all of those things that they've worked on for quite some time, and also kind of like, putting into material the doubts, the fears, and issues that they have, and also the idea of belongingness and home that is not attached to a certain place or location. although like there are, this the importance of understanding these places that you've been to and you've lived, for example. But I really like the dilemma that they have on the show on how to be able to present their own identities and who they are, thinking about these changes in their lives when they had to move from one place to another. So I really really like that idea. That's a summary of Banyuhay in a way.
Like, how did you come up with the name, and then, like, how did you bring these group of artists together in a way that kind of like stayed true to that theme?
Actually, I came into the process a little bit later on when they were ready with the works and all that. And it's also part of my curatorial practice. Sometimes you work with works that are already completed, and it's just a matter of like communicating and negotiating with the artist how you would be presenting it, especially that for this particular exhibition there's a limitation with the way how it's going to be seen physically. Like I would definitely love to be in Cebu and eat all the lechon. I've been to Cebu once. It was a great time, so I would definitely love to go back. But also like engaging with the audience. I don't know what the contemporary how I don't know how the contemporary art crowd in Cebu will receive a show like this. So it's part of that. I wish we could have like some artist talk and some more guided tours around. Maybe Tonyo and Meatfist can talk about how they organized the show, because they were the ones who did the initial planning. I was more into like how we can present and engage our audience. Yeah.
Well, it began when I went back to Cebu after a few years of being in Manila. I didn't come back anymore because I was based in Manila. Then that's when I found, I guess, Qube Gallery, and I was able to walk through the current exhibit, which was, I think, Camping Trip 1. That was the first introduction to Cebuano contemporary art. And I didn't really know that was a thing before. And I felt like at that, like as I was going through it, I had this, I guess, idea or feeling that I wanted to explain what I was feeling at the time. So I guess the timing was kind of perfect in a way. So that the idea or the concept initially began in that first visit with Qube. And then later on, obviously, I had time to reflect and then built a relationship with Qube. And I wanted to do a show. I just didn't know what yet. I guess talked over with a few of my friends, especially from Malate, which is our org. And then Chubbs, Meatfist, and Kevin had very similar backgrounds in a way that we came from outside of Manila. And then we had our influential, I guess, university lives in Manila. And then having to go back and forth. And we had that experience, but it obviously wasn't the same. We all had different levels and different aspects that we wanted to tackle. And I felt it would be perfect to have us all together in the show, because since we're not that many artists, we'd be able to make a lot of work, so we could have a lot more dialogue between ourselves and within the pieces we make, because it's kind of doesn't do it justice with having a topic so diverse and so that it has many parts to have just one piece. Yeah. Meatfist, you can take it away, I guess, with how. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Just I mean, he came out of nowhere, you know what I mean? And he was like, "Hey man, I've been thinking about things," and yeah, and then he just asked me to join along with Kevin. I mean, like it was yeah, we just sat down, we talked about it for a while, and then the name Banyuhay actually came from Kevin itself, because yeah, we were just talking about these topics and just like saying whatever came up. And Kevin just suggested, why not Banyuhay? And then we're like, what's that? And he's like, it means metamorphosis. So yes, that's basically it. That's kind of like how it came to life. And then like from then on, it was just like 6-7 months of slogging through like ideas and failed projects and whatever, until we came to whatever we got.
Like, how did you guys all meet?
We were all like in this one organization in the LSU. It was called Malate Literary Folio, and it still is. It's still live. It's still running, I guess. And it's like this sort of org, this sort of collective of like writers, artists, poets. It's the official literary folio of the LSU, and we were just there, and we kind of grew and formed ourselves in our crafts. through that organization until whatever this is. Like, yeah, we just continued it.
This is a question for Gwen. What was your first impression of the three artists when you met them / were introduced to them?
No, I didn't laugh for. I mean, I didn't mean that laugh. Okay. So, part of what we are missing because of the pandemic and all the lockdown protocols is the ability to build this relationship and rapport in a physical sense. Well, fortunately, I guess Tanya and I had that rapport already. Like, he went to one of the guys I work with, and we did a portfolio review. I think sometime in, was that last year, Tanya? I don't remember. Or was it this year?
Last year.
Last year. And so, like, I just, because I do that from time to time, I really like and talking to the artists and understanding their practice and why they do this. There's always, you know, I really want to understand why they do things, because I'm also an artist. Actually, I studied painting, and but I'm more interested about other people's works. So I really like understanding the things, because you'll find amazing stories, and sometimes you don't even realize that that the works that they're doing now are connected to a lot of things that happen to them, or within their environment, or the way they grew up, stuff like that. So looking at the works, of course, and I was thinking really like how I would tie all the works together. There was so many notes that they sent, fortunately, because sometimes I would work on an exhibition and some artists would just send me, two sentences. And so the way we did it is that we did a Facebook call, like a conference with Kevin and Meatfist and Antonio. Hopefully, we'll get to do that again in person with beer and with food and in a more relaxed environment. But yeah, so I did. We did have a call. It was it was like a 2-hour call. It was quite long because I really wanted to understand why they were doing these things that they were doing, and explain to me the dynamics of working in this exhibition, because I've always believed that as an artist, you have a responsibility to yourself, not just to the audience, but also to yourself, to create works that have meaning. You can't just have a group show just for the sake of you want to have a show and prepare that as something that you want to put on your CV and use that to have a solo exhibition in the future. Group exhibitions are conversations, or the lack of it. So and it's not always that they always have to like be on the same page with something. They can either like respond to the theme that they want to bring up, or they can also oppose that. So these are things that I explained to this artist about working on an exhibition, like not to be pressured to respond only as agreeing to the concept, but also like maybe having a reflection of why do you need to create an exhibition about these things that you want to talk about. So definitely, and I've encouraged them also to use their voice in terms of like, I think we're gonna have like some video presentations of you guys discussing your work, and I've encouraged Tonyo, because you can speak Cebuano, Bisaya. What's the right proper terms? I'm sorry. Bisaya, yeah, because I've been more in Iloilo actually, so I'm no more like Hiligay na. So anyway, so I've encouraged Tanya, like, I think it's time, this is especially for Tanya, because I know how, this is something that's really remarkable for him, going back to Cebu and having a show there about his personal feelings of being detached to a place where he grew up and trying to like putting things back in order. So I've encouraged him to say record his statement in Visaya. I think it's important to connect to the people that you grew up with and are in Cebu. So, and also like for Meat Feast also, I think we went through like a complex dialogue of the Filipino identity. It has a lot of layers into it, and in the past I've worked with a lot of people, not just in the art world but also in other industries where they are part of the third culture. There's a big topic about using Philippine X and
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
using Philippine X. And I've always been I've always pushed for letting those part of the Filipino diaspora to have their own narrative, to have their own idea of identity, because that is something that here living in the Philippines as a Filipino living in the Philippines it's going to be different if if you're Filipino grew up abroad, and especially for Meatfist because he's half Filipino and half Indian, and you can't take away any of those identity from him. At the same time, like he grew up in Dubai, so attaching himself to Dubai as well is also something that needs to be addressed. What is a what is a Filipino? What does a Filipino look like? And it's part of the work that he'd done for this exhibition, like using the body, the physical body, and also like showing landscapes to address that identities are not tied to the body and to the land, maybe um, and in a way. So, and also like for Kevin, his childhood, he grew up in different places, but one thing was just the only thing that was constant to his life is drawing. So in his drawings you can see a lot of transformations of all these objects and a lot of symbolism and imagery, because that is how he chronicled and still chronicles his life through drawing. So yeah, that was my impression. My impression is that they probably know what they want to do. They would just need to like discuss it more to find, I don't know, maybe to cross that bridge of going a little more further with what they already know and have.
You talked a lot about impact, so I was wondering, for the three of you, um, is there, can you sum up in a sentence what you hope the audience would take away from this exhibition?
Man, I don't know. Like, there's so much to say about it, but I guess like the path to self-realization is as close as it's closer than you may think. And finding yourself is probably like the best kind of thing we all can do first and foremost before moving forward and doing stuff for the other. Antonio, what about you, man?
I don't know. For me, I guess the most important thing, or the thing that was most impactful for me while creating, which hopefully translates to the viewers, is that maybe being able to accept, both acknowledge and accept your past, because you know nowadays it's pretty, with how fast life is, we often live in the present or the future. We don't really look at the past anymore. It's always done. I think that's we can't learn from that anymore. We just experience it. But I think it's important to like be able to look back and learn and acknowledge that it actually happened, because it can kind of help you accept and know who you are now and who you can become in the future.
To me, I think it's important, especially in this time, that there are, well, definitely, like there are a lot of more urgent issues and concerns, and a lot of things happening in the social political climate of the world. Like a lot of things are definitely happening, and we need to pay attention to all of that. But at the same time, we need to remember all these small stories and all these personal narratives that actually exist in larger social political narratives as well. If you think about it, all this idea of attaching yourself to a home and your identity, and what was the reason for all of these changes, and a lot of that has something to do with forced migration because of economic reasons, and that is part of things that we have to realize, like our life, the way we live it, are bounded by this certain conditions that we have to recognize, and we need to always put that in context of things. So it's not simply like meat fish. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background.
It's cool. It's ambient. It's
um
ambient sound.
what I'm saying is that all this important things, and that may look very, very simple. Just a simple fact, for example, of Meatfist growing up in Dubai. It's a very ordinary thing for a lot of Filipinos to be born in a different country and have mixed race parents, or born to a different culture. But we don't really look at that sometimes in terms of like reflecting what that means in our society, in our nation building. A little bit of introspection can help all of us, at least to understand how we want to live the present and what we want as a society. That's not one sentence, no?
I think the cats had like five more, but
Yeah, I know.
it's okay.
So we had one last question because the exhibition also deals a lot with like metamorphosis and change. We were wondering, especially with the changing world now, how do you think the pandemic has affected the art world?
Antonio, take it away, man.
I guess for me, the most impactful thing was how important, I guess, visual, not but just visual art, but all types of media and art and culture is. And it's somewhat taken for granted, because now obviously it can be used as something to just look at that's beautiful or it looks nice as a distraction. But for me personally, seeing it now, it's enlightening, it's inspiring to see that artists are taking upon themselves to tackle difficult issues, especially now because of how important it is, because it's happening, and being able to inform people in a way that's unique to you, and also in a way that communicates to certain audiences or certain information that might be difficult to express with just words or with just news headlines or something. I think that's, I guess, the most important thing that I've seen and experienced now.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it's really about like keeping a record of like what's really happening. That's a lot of art, that's a lot of culture. Before they used to scratch it on cave walls, now we make really nice pretty things. And yeah, we just record what's around us. Art does really play a record in like understanding also the thoughts that are happening at the time in and of itself, and why those thoughts are prevalent or why those thoughts are there for those individuals during that time. So it's like a form of record keeping. But there's also like that whole idea of like how it communicates. Also, it's like a mirror that reflects back onto society, and like we'll be able to sort of understand ourselves better, more than just like speaking or writing and stuff. Like the different modes of communication and the visual making that is art is also another language, another form of communication that I think could get into dimensions like a little bit more than maybe like a simple article or like et cetera, et cetera. So like there's different ways to go about it, and I think art really does play a big role in.
So I think with the pandemic, everything actually changed, not just the art world, but more importantly, the emphasis on people, artists, of people working in the art world, like artists, cultural workers. The emphasis on the vulnerability of working conditions, I guess, and also like in terms of government support. So these are things that are in discussion, and I think that's one of the important things that the pandemic brought up about. There's this article saying that I think this was in Singapore, like the artist is non-essential aspect of the society, but that's a thing, and in a way also it's also something that us who work in this field as artists, curators, cultural workers, to understand also our importance in the society. But obviously, as artists, we have platforms, and we can either use those platforms to become engaged more with the community and present all these issues so that everything can be seen and not put into the shadows of things. So I think that's what changed in the art world with the pandemic. And definitely like more and more artists are questioning themselves. When I talk to a lot of artists now, like that's one of the things that they have an issue with, like understanding the importance of what they're doing. Like, can you even paint to save the world? All of these things. But what I always say is that you get to do what you do best, and in a way there's always something that will come out of it that the world will be able to evolve with.
All right, that wraps up our episode for today. Thanks for listening till the end. If you haven't yet, you can check out their exhibition on our website, www.qubegallery.ph. Take care, everybody.